Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to explore an important concept in web development. So the difference between full page reload and the partial page update, and that can be done using Fetch API. So understanding this difference is crucial when designing a responsive web application. So this button state manager project that we are going to do in this video will illustrate how to do it. So as an example, you can see something which does not use it, which uses the traditional HTTP request. So let's talk about it first. So the HTTP request that causes a full page reload, like if it's sent, click on this button, what happens is the entire page is reloading. So what happens is the server processes the request, generates a new HTML page, and sends it back to the browser, and which reloads it. So this is what happens when I'm clicking on add new friend. It is going to the controller where things are happening, and it's sending a response where a new page is being reloaded with a new information. So the entire page gets reloaded in this case, right? So this approach works, but it has some drawback. Every time the page reloads, you lose the current state of the browser, and also the experience is slow. Okay, so the entire page has to reload. So what is the alternative? So the alternative is the XML HTTP response object that we have using Ajax, and the newer version of it is called Fetch. So there's a Fetch API in JavaScript that enables us to send enable us to send responses, these requests to the server, and receive data and update just the part of the data. To illustrate this, let's look at this example. So if I click on this, a request is being sent, but this is sent to the DB. The request is being sent to the server, but what's happening is only this part. You can just see, focus on this, only the updated part is getting updated. And this we are ensuring by the Fetch API that JavaScript provides. So basically, when the button is clicked, the Fetch request is sent, and the partial update happens. Okay, so as an example, this is how the Fetch API works. So this is an example of the Fetch API. You pass a URL and then the method. And if you don't pass a method, it's by default a get method. You can pass in header if you want, optional, and the body in case you want to pass some data with that request. Fetch returns a promise, and you can treat it just like a promise. The response that it returns, you can then handle the response. You can send the response as JSON, block, status text, like whatever it is here. And if there's any error, you can log that as well. So just like a normal promise, it's much better than handling the older XML HTTP request that we had, because it returns us a promise, which is much more easier to handle. Okay, so now let's look into how we can try and build this. Okay, so currently you see there are a few buttons on the screen. There are two parts of it. If I click this button, only the state would change. Even if I reload the page, status is not going away because it's taking it from the DB. It's not only taking the client, the front end, but it's coming from the DB. So it's getting toggled. Whichever button you want to click, it gets toggled, and only that status is getting changed. Also, the button that we change, that is the only change that we are going to see. Okay, so in this we'll learn a few things, right? How to change the state of a button, how to change the specific state of that button only, which is getting clicked, and how to update it partially. So these two things will be learned. So let's go and code. Application built using Node.js Express, Mongoose, and EJS. It features 7 buttons, each representing day of a week. Each button can toggle between 3 states: gray, red, green, without reloading the page. The state changes are stored in MongoDB database and reflected immediately on the front end. This project demonstrates how to create a dynamic database backend web application with real-time user interface. So let's initialize our Node project by doing npm init. This basically creates a package.json file, and this package.json file will have all the dependency and the version detail of our app. If you want, you can edit it. So once done, we can create the index.js file. This is the entry point for our npm, the Node project. So then we can install Express. Let's import it. So import. Now you notice I'm using this syntax of imports rather than using the require one. So we'll have to change the package.json file, update it the type as module. Otherwise it will throw an error. Now let's try to initialize the app. For this route, we are going to have this controller, which will send a response, simple response for now. Okay, and the app will have to listen on some port. So it'll be 3000, and it can simply console.log to ensure that it's running. Okay, so now let's try to test it. So yeah, it is running. We can check it. Yep, so it's printing. What we can do now is connect to our database. So for that, I'm going to install a driver, which is Mongoose. Import it. Let's try to connect to the database. So to do that, it's very simple. We have a connect function where we have to pass the connection URL, the connection string. For that, you can open your MongoDB atlas that you have, and from there you can copy it and paste it there. Okay, so this is the URI I have. I'll paste it here, and we can name it as, let's say, test button something, the DB, and it will connect. Now let's try to create the schema for it. So the schema for it would be, let's say, day schema, let's call it. And now we want to have few things, right? We want to have the day, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the string, and then we want to have the state of it, whether it's which color it is, gray, green, or red. So Mongoose dot schema will have to pass the object over here, which is, we'll have one field as day, type would be string. Let's keep it as required, and then we'll have another field which is going to be state, and the state is again going to be of the type string, red, green, and it's going to be only of 3 type, right? So let's keep it as nm, red, green, and gray. By default, we can have a value in this, and that can be, let's say, gray. By default, all of them would be gray. And this is our schema over here. Let's create a model. So we'll call it a day, and then Mongoose dot model, and then we can have the document name as day, and then we can pass the schema. This is the model that we have. Now let's list all the days that we want. Okay, so let's have an array, days, week, something like that, and then we have, let's say, Sunday, Monday, okay. So we have created this array over here. Now let's try to initialize our database with all these values, so it should be present in our database, these days that we have. Okay, so to do that, let's iterate over it, and for each values, so we'll have the day, and what we are going to do, we are going to, before initializing, we'll have to check if it's already present in database or not. So let's say a flag, we'll call it probably, and let's say it would be d, and we'll find the day in this. If it exists, if it doesn't exist, we'll initialize it. So const new day is equal to day, and we are going to pass this day that we have, and obviously it's going to be new here, and we'll pass this. We don't need to pass the status because by default it's gray. So, and then we'll have to save it. Now, yeah, so if we use it, most probably this will be null while it comes here. So we'll wait until it finishes its search into the DB. And now since we are waiting for it, await, we'll have to use async, call it as async function. Again, while saving also we'll wait, then only we'll move to the next line. So yeah, so this should help initialize it. This will initialize it. We can check it actually. So we go here, and then, so we can check if we have it. So yeah, we have it, the test button, and these are the things that we have. Okay, it's working fine. Now, rather than having this over here, we want to render all the buttons on the app, okay, on the landing page. Okay, so to do that, let's use the EJS that we have library, the template. Let's install it, and we'll also need to set the app view engine as EJS. This, because of this, we'll not have to write EJS every time we give it to the render function. So we have the EJS, and once we have the EJS, we'll have to create a views folder. This is how it works. It looks in the views folder for all the EJS that we have. Let's call it index.ejs file create. And now here we can do one thing. Let's query the database for days, all the days, and we'll pass it into the index.ejs. Okay, so const days, it's going to be day.find. It's going to look for all the days. Also, we'll wait for it to fetch all the results. So over here, this, and similarly, we'll have to make it async. Okay, and then we'll render the response. We'll render it along with the index, and we'll pass this days over here. Let's use this days in our index.ejs. So over here, let's create a HTML, very basic one. So then we'll have head, and this will have title, button manager or something. Okay, and then in future we'll add very minimal style to the button. Okay, like padding and all. So let's keep it over here, and then we can have the body where all the buttons are going to be rendered. So let's have the buttons here. So days dot, let's iterate it for each day. What we are going to do is we are going to create a button for them. Let's close this, and for each there will be a button over here. So we can call it a button, and we can also have a text for the button, right? They should have a text, and that text will be nothing but day.day. Okay, so if we see this, let's see, hope it works. So we should see the buttons over here. Okay, there's some error. We'll see. RESE is not defined. Okay, so there's a small typo there. It should be this, obviously. And now hopefully it will work. So we have it over here. Now let's increase the size a bit and format it. So to do that, let's add a class and call it button. Yeah, and over here we can style the button class, and let's add a padding of 10px, 20px, and font size, let's keep it 16px. Let's also add a margin of 5px. This will look slightly better, bigger. Okay, so it's easier for us to click. Now what we need is definitely the color thing that we need, right? So over here we can give it a style of background color, and in background color we can get it from the day.state, which has the color. Okay, so by default initially it should be gray. Okay, we have it gray over here. Also, on clicking the button we need some function, right? So on click we need toggle, let's say toggle button will create a function, and we'll pass it a day toggle function. So what toggle function will do is, for each button that's clicked for each day, it will go into the server, it will fetch that button from the server, it will look for the new state, store the new state in the DB, and then return me the new state so that I can render it on the screen. So this will do that function, but then for it we need to pass it a day. Okay, so let's have it over here, day.day. Okay, So yeah, this is looking good. Let's try to create these things now, the function that we have. So over here we can write a script over here to create a function, and we'll have a function, and the function name would be toggle button. It will take day, and what it will first do is it will get the response from the server, okay, of the new state that we have. So response, it will fetch it, and we'll need to pass a URL that it's going to look the route. Let's create a route for it, how this page is going to connect with the server. So for that, we'll need to create a post route. Why? Because it's going to also change the state of the DB. So let's have a state. The route would be state, and we are going to get the day in the params. Let's say in the parameter we'll get it, and then we'll have the controller request response. And let's first get the day param that we have. To get it, we need request dot params, and now we can fetch the buttons. So button db, button from the db, let's say. And how are we going to fetch it? We are going to say day dot find one, and we are going to pass the day over here. Okay, we'll have to wait until it's finds it, so that it doesn't return us null to the next line. And if we are using this, we'll have to make it async function, right? Okay, now we have this button db, and let's create a new state that we have to calculate, right? The new state of the button. And for that, we are going to use a switch statement. So for the button that we have, button db dot state, the current state, we are going to switch. We are going to see if it's green, then in that case the new state should be red, I would say. Okay, so the new state should be red, and we have to break also, otherwise it will go to the next line as well, next case statement as well. We want to break, and if it is, let's say, red, then in that case my new state should be gray, let's say. Okay, and then again I'll break. By default, the case would be what? The third case, right? Which is it is going to be gray. In case it is gray, what do we want? We want the next state to be green. Okay, so this is something that we have. This is the switch statement that we have, new state. So now let's change the button db state as the new state once we have calculated the new state, and we'll also have to save it. So button db dot save, and we'll have to response dot send. Let's say we'll send the button db. Okay, now the thing is we'll wait for it before sending, otherwise it might go to the previous one. We'll wait for this to finish. Okay, and this looks good. So now we have already got this route over here. So let's go to this file and fetch the route. So to this, I am going to just pass state, and then next thing that we need is the day. Okay, which day that we are giving as a param we'll give, and then the method has to be the post method. So we'll have to pass this method, and it has to be post. Okay, it's going to return me a response, but I'll wait for it to return me a response since I'm using a wait, again async. And now what we do is we get the response and collect it as JSON. So let's call it a button well, let's say, and this will have response, yeah, and response, and we'll convert the response in JSON. Okay, and then we'll have a function which updates the button that we have, the color and all. We'll pass it day and also the state that we have. Okay, which day and which color we want. So we'll create this update button function now. So for now, what we do is we create an update button function. For that function keyword update button, and it takes day and the state, right? Now what we do is we first let's fetch the document, so the button that we have to change. Okay, so that's going to be document.get element by id. So have we got the id? How are we going to get the id? So let's get the id. Let's keep them as day. So when I have this day, I know this is the id I want to change for each day. So let's have the id something to do with day. Yeah, so button would id would be, let it be simple as day only. So for like Monday would have the id as Monday. So day dot day, and this should be equal to sign over here. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to pass it the day variable, and this should get us the id if we want. And then we can change the button dot text content. We can change the text content, can be, now the text content can be, okay, it can have the day, which day it is, and the status. Okay, the state of the day, if it is green or something like that. Okay, so that we can see the change, how it's just updating the part that it needs to, not the entire content. And then we can also change the color. So okay, so to change the color, we have something called style, and then the background color we want to change, and we can change it to simply state. Okay, this looks good. Let's see if it works. So it's changing, right, as expected.